Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Morning all. Awesome. Good stuff. Morning all. How are we all doing? Good stuff. Had a couple of coffees now. We're ready for the day. Good stuff. So what I'm going to talk to you about today, I'm Stu. I'm sales director at a company called Lego. I'm going to talk you through today why I think the secret to supercharging sales enablement and adoption is locked in sales reps conversations. It's a bit of a mouthful, not the most clickbait title. I've practiced that about 15 times, so I'm glad that's out of the way. But I'm going to talk you through why I believe this is the key to unlocking and supercharging sales enablement and better equipping our sellers to perform. So why should you care? As a professional, I help sales enablement leaders better enable their sales teams. So that's what I do, that's what Lego does, and I'm going to give you some ideas today how you can do the same. There's a little bit of a product pitch in there, I'll be totally transparent with you, but it's more ideas that you can take away and start to incorporate in your organization, whether or not you choose to work with Lego or not. And here's some of the reasons why you should care about what I'm going to discuss today. So some stats to get you hopefully engaged. 42% of sales reps feel they don't have enough information when they make a sales call. So nearly half of sales reps don't feel they're equipped to have the right conversation. The panel earlier talked about articulating the right message, engaging with prospects. Well, a lot of our sellers, unfortunately, don't feel they're competent and confident to have those conversations. Sales coaching is as near as we can get to a silver bullet in sales enablement. Sales coaching can increase win rates by 29%. Imagine your organization now, if you could overnight have an impact of 29% on your close rates. What would that mean to your organization? I'm sure there's a lot of zeros in that number, so it's a massive impact. Reps themselves, there's a big demand now from sales reps. They want to learn, they want to improve, they want to get better. Within 4 years, if you don't better enable sales professionals to grow and develop, 60% of those will leave your organization. And you're probably left with the 40% that you don't want in truth. The 60% will be the ones that you want because they want to improve, they want to get better, and they want to perform. 55% of C-suite executives believe sales enablement is the top investment they can make to increase sales productivity. So the good news is here, as a sales enablement audience, we've got buy-in. The C-level, the executives realize how important this is. 5 years ago or so, sales enablement was quite an unknown thing. It's getting bigger, it's getting traction. And C-level executives are starting to realize that. 55% realize that that's the key to unlocking, the results in sales. And a little bit like the panel earlier from Deliveroo, sales reps on average spend 440 hours a year trying to find the right content to share with their prospects. So let's put that into context, 440 hours. If we do a 35-hour week, it's 12, 13 weeks out of the year. You take holidays, you take bank holidays as we have in the UK out of that. It's a quarter of their time is spent looking for content. Quarter of their time. Absolute massive amount of time. And 84% of sales reps achieve their quota when their organization is able to implement a best-in-class sales enablement solution. 84%. There's a massive problem in the sales world at the moment where people are missing quotas. They're getting bigger, they're getting harder to achieve, and a lot of people are missing. But the key to helping people achieve those quotas is in an effective sales enablement solution. And I'm going to talk to you why I think conversations, or conversation intelligence as we call it, is the key to that. So that's what we're going to discuss today. Hopefully everybody will leave with a couple of ideas. I'm sure some of you have most of these things covered off. I'll get through this slide quickly because nobody wants two of me on the screen at the same time. But I am Stu, as I mentioned, sales director at Lego. I was part of the founding team at a company called Refract, which some of you may be aware of. We were a leader in the conversation intelligence world. So we partner with organizations like Johnson & Johnson, VMware, and we analyze conversations using artificial intelligence and machine learning to pick out key insights. About 2.5 years ago, we started working with Lego in a partnership. So we both have the same kind of North Star. Our goal as an organization was to better enable sales professionals. That's what we wanted to do, but we went about it in different ways. We analysed what actually happens. We discussed earlier about how can sellers articulate the right message when they engage with prospects. We want to analyse that and see what people are doing. Lego is a best-in-class sales enablement solution. Again, we work with companies like IBM, TripAdvisor, and a whole host of others regarding sales enablement technology. So 2.5 years ago, we started working together, and we quickly realized that the kind of stars aligned and that we were a perfect fit. And then 18 months ago, at the end of 2020, Allego acquired Refract, and we've now brought this world together, which I'll touch on with you in a little bit. What I'm going to talk to you about today is a little bit of my opinion. I'm not going to deny that, but it's all based on factual information. So since my time at Allego and Refract 7 years ago, we've analysed 110 million sales conversations. That's real conversations that your sellers are having with their prospects. We've analysed those conversations, and we've picked out some key insights and information that I'm going to share with you this afternoon, or this morning even, about why we're losing winnable deals. And then, as I say, as a salesperson, I couldn't have a little bit of a pitch in here. I'm also the co-author of a book called Problem Prospecting, which is a little bit of a side project. In lockdown in 2020, me and two of my colleagues, everybody was all over the place. You know, it was unprecedented, which seemed to be the word with COVID and everything that was going on. And salespeople were struggling. People were getting furloughed in the UK, and nobody knew what was around the corner. So we decided to try and give something back to the sales community. We created a book that I never had when I was a sales professional. And we created a kind of Bible of the how-to for sales professionals and what they needed to do. It started as a Google document. We shared it with some few people. We got great feedback. People said you should make this a book. So we did, and it's now a best-selling book called Problem Prospecting. So that's the end of the pitch on problem prospecting, but I thought I'd get it in there. So, as I mentioned, what Allego are doing is combining these two worlds. So they're often separate entities. So we've got sales conversations, which happen in silo. So when your reps engage with prospects, can they articulate the right message when they go to market? And then we've got sales enablement, which, you know, sales enablers do a fantastic job of equipping sellers. You know, you have the onboarding courses, you have the content, the learning, et cetera, et cetera. You don't need me to tell you what sales enablement involves. But often, they are two separate entities. And sales enablement leaders I speak with have very little visibility into if that content, those resources, that training is actually put into practice. When the rubber meets the road, when a salesperson speaks with a prospect, are they using all of these fantastic resources and delivering the right message that you've gone to lengths to develop? And that's where the insight ends. So what we do is converge these two worlds. So we've got sales enablement, which is everything you can imagine in sales enablement. Like I said, the modern learning, the content, the onboarding. But then we've also got the conversation intelligence, which is sales conversations. So we can actually provide insight if people are using that. So an example I often use is, you know, the most important part of a training session. If you do a 4-day training event with your team, the most important part of that training event is day 5. That's when your sales team go and speak with prospects. That's the most important part. And what sales conversation intelligence does is gives you insight if those people are actually articulating that right message and putting into practice what you've taught them. And I'll talk you through how we do that, why it's valuable, and why I think there's some insights in there for you. So we offer something we called triggered learning. So a little bit like Deliveroo was speaking about earlier, sales reps often don't know what to share, they don't have the right context to share it, they go looking for different pieces of information. Because we analyse all of the conversations that happen from a sales rep, we can provide the right content and resources to that salesperson based on their moment of need. So I'll give you an example. I could have a conversation with a prospect tomorrow, and we might have a conversation, they might say, looks good, Stu, but we're currently with competitor X. How do you compare to them? And as a salesperson, I'll do my best job at trying to articulate, you know, the talk track or the messaging about why we're a better solution, which might be good, it might not. You know, it'll be hit and miss with different reps. What the conversation intelligence can do is analyze that conversation, and it'll send me the resources and the best practice examples that I need based on the conversation I've just had. So it can send me a best practice example of one of my peers explaining why Allego was a better solution than the competitor. It can send me a case study of a customer in a similar vertical, similar industry, who's moved from that competitor to Allego. It could send me cheat sheets, battle cards, you name it really. You're only limited by your imagination. But what I'm trying to say here is Allego will connect the dots. So everybody wants content and resources in that moment of need. And because conversation intelligence is analysing those conversations, we can serve up the right resources. So a salesperson doesn't have to go looking for it. I'll hold my hands up. I'm a salesperson. I have been for 15 years or so. I'm pretty lazy. You know, if the content isn't there and it's readily available, I'll not use it. marketers and sales enablers do a great job of creating all this content, but often it doesn't get used because salespeople don't know what to use, they don't know when to use it, and this just completely eradicates that problem because we're serving that up to the seller so they've got what they need at the right time. And that also identifies learning opportunities. Because we're analysing conversations, we can identify an individual's strengths and weaknesses. Everybody wants personal learning and tailored training and coaching. Nobody wants a generic one-size-fits-all training, and for obvious reasons. So because we're analysing conversations, we can identify where an individual's strengths and weaknesses are. I use this analogy a lot. I'm a big boxing fan, and I use this analogy a lot. A trainer will coach their boxer for 12 weeks before the fight. They'll go through the fight camp. They'll assess everything that they're doing in that training camp, and then they'll watch the fight. And in between rounds, they'll give them feedback on what they can do better. As sales enablement leaders and as sales leaders, we often do the 12-week training camp, but then we don't watch the fight. It happens in silence. We've got no idea what's actually happening. What are our salespeople doing? And that's the black box that we unlock. And because we can unlock that, you can't improve what you don't know. So if you don't know where the strengths and weaknesses of your sales team are, how on earth do you start to improve it? It's impossible. Or what you do, which is what everybody tries to do, is delivers generic training which they hope will move the needle, but that's not personalised to that individual strengths and weaknesses. And because conversation intelligence is analysing those conversations, we can give you an insight into an individual's strengths and weaknesses. And then champagne examples. One of the big things sales enablement leaders I speak to and C-level executives is they have top performers in their organisation. I'm sure you all can think of a top performer in your organisation now who's always top of the leaderboards, they make the most commission, and they're that role model salesperson that you would love to replicate. But the challenge is it's very difficult to replicate those behaviours and that top performance that an individual demonstrates because it's hard to share best practice. It is difficult, especially now. We live in a hybrid world where everybody's working from the kitchen table or they're working from who knows where, rather than offices where you can learn through osmosis, sitting next to your colleagues. So it's difficult to take what top performers do differently and share it with everybody. But a Lego does this. So based on the example I gave earlier about a competitor, we can actually serve up best practice moments based on that conversation. So we can say, hey Stu, this competitor was mentioned. He's a best practice example of one of the top performers delivering that talk track about why we're a better solution. So we can start to engage and give people insight into the right messaging. And this is something to have a think on and have a ponder as we go through the presentation. Like I say, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure everybody can think of a top performer in their organisation that they'd love to replicate. If you think about that top performer or top performer who you've worked with in the past, what do they do differently in their sales conversations that makes them so successful? So have a think. What do they do? And a lot of people, the first things that will jump to mind is, they work harder, they've got more experience. And although those are all true, there's also breadcrumbs for success in their conversations. There's things they do when they're engaged with your customers and prospects that they do better than average or underperformers. Have a think what you think they do, and we can talk through that at the end if we've got some time. I'd love to get some thoughts from each individual. But it doesn't end there. We're speaking about the rep there, and obviously the content and connecting all the dots. We can pretty much eradicate that 440 hours that is needed looking for content, a quarter of the time that salespeople spend looking for content because of conversation intelligence. But that works for your buyers as well. Now more than ever, a lot of the buying process is done asynchronously. So buyers are making decisions without engaging with salespeople. They're doing research online, they're looking at reviews, they're looking at industry experts, and they're far down the buying cycle before they even engage with prospects. And then when they do, we have to provide the right resources at the right time so those buyers can make an informed decision. And conversation intelligence works in the same way for a buyer as it does as a sales rep. So it can serve up content to your buyers based on what is relevant and pertinent in their world. So again, an example would be in your CRM, if you've got an opportunity in a certain vertical, certain size, et cetera, we can actually serve up and provide content to that buyer that they can consume and use, and then we can track who's using it, who's sharing it, what content is actually contributing to winning deals. So it's very powerful there from the buyer's perspective as well. And then managers. So let's talk about managers. I am one, so again, I can throw myself under the bus here. We've already identified, and I'm sure hopefully most of you will agree, that coaching and giving feedback and coaching is as near to a silver bullet as what we can get in sales. If we could listen to every conversation that our sellers are having and coach and give them feedback, I'm sure that would increase the performance of the team, but it's simply impossible. We can't listen to every conversation. And managers tell me when we speak to them, they can't coach as much as they would like to. So every manager says, I would like to coach, but I can't. And there's often a couple of main reasons for that. One is time, which is a weak excuse in my opinion. I make the excuse I can't go to the gym because I haven't got time. Well, really, if I make it a priority, I could stop watching Netflix and go to the gym. And managers are the same. If they make it a priority, they could actually start coaching. But it's a genuine concern because managers are pulled from pillar to post. They've got a number of things to do, and often coaching gets put on the back burner. And also, where do you start? If I'm a manager and I've got 8, 10 or more reps in my team, how do I start getting visibility into what they're doing? Do I listen to recordings? Do I join Zooms? Do I do ride-alongs? Back in the day, do I go and shadow them in the field? Well, all of those are so time-consuming and costly, but they also have an impact on the seller. If I go to a seller to a meeting, I'm going to impact that meeting by being there. That's going to change what they would do in that meeting because they'll do what they think I want them to do rather than what they would naturally do. So managers have a real struggle there. But again, conversation intelligence solves this. Because we analyze every conversation that a rep has, we can serve up key coachable moments to a manager based on what's happened in that conversation. So think of Spotify. If any of you use Spotify, which I'm sure you do, Spotify will give you a playlist of songs you want to listen to. A Lego can provide a similar playlist to a manager. So it can say, hey Stu, here's Chris on your team, here's some coachable moments from this week that you should listen to. It'll give me a list of his conversations, but furthermore, it'll take me to those relevant moments in that conversation that I should listen to. And that might be where he's had an objection, where he hasn't set next steps, etc., etc. And it'll take me straight to that moment so I can quickly listen to that and I can quickly give feedback and coaching on that moment. And it really amplifies and accelerates the impact or the time I have to coach and gives a far bigger return on that. And then one which I think is massive and really resonates with a lot of our customers is the organizational insight. So there's so much data in the conversations your sales team are having about the business, about where you want to go, and organizational insight. And that covers every part of the business from marketing, from sales, marketing, product, customer success, etc. There's key information in those conversations that will be helpful to define that strategy for each individual department. So that unfiltered voice of your buyers is really pertinent and relevant. So marketing and getting better messaging that lands with prospects. Product can define the roadmap based on what customers are asking for or based on why you're losing deals to competitors. You can get that visibility into why you're winning deals, why you're losing deals. C-level executives can make that strategy, those big strategic decisions based on what their customers are seeing rather than just the opinion or who shouts loudest in that team meeting. And it's data-driven insights like that impact an organization so they can better move forward. And then deal insights. So I have these conversations myself now, and it's definitely aided by a Lego, but in my past, I would speak with my manager, I'd have a good opportunity, and the conversation would go something like this. Hey Stu, how's that opportunity with Apple? And I'd be speaking to my manager and I'd be, yeah, really good, really good. It's a really good conversation. They seem really excited. I think there's a deal to be done here. And I'd get a pat on the back. That's awesome. Sounds really good. Do you think it'll close this month? Yeah, probably. I think we've got a good chance of getting it in this month. Yeah. Awesome. Well done, Stu. Pat on the back. And that's my manager's forecast based on what I've just told him, which we have happy ears as salespeople. I'm an optimistic person. I do think every customer is going to, close. But that's what we're forecasting on. Rep opinions, or at best, weak CRM notes. What a rep puts in the CRM. And I'm sure you've all seen the CRM notes that reps leave. There's not much information in those at best. But how conversation intelligence changes that is a manager or a leader can quickly get visibility into an opportunity. So if I've got an opportunity with Apple, my manager can go into the deal and see a highlight reel of the key moments in that opportunity. Maybe it's the competitors that we're up against, the key moments, who the decision maker is, what the next steps are, but also trigger things like red flags. So it might be that I'm forecasting a deal to close this month, but I haven't had a pricing discussion yet. So as a manager, I can say, well, Stu, you're forecasting this, but you haven't even discussed price. You need to start doing that. So it's giving total visibility into those opportunities. So as a manager, we can better forecast, but also start to solve problems and opportunities before they slip and it becomes closed lost. A manager can intervene and start to help that opportunity hopefully come to fruition and close. And then that kind of brings me to what a Lego do. So it is a little bit of a second pitch here. But a Lego is a sales enablement solution. I mentioned the convergence of our worlds in conversation intelligence and sales enablement technology. What we do and what our North Star is at a Lego is all about the rep. We are founded and created by sales professionals. And my passion is helping sales professionals get better. I've been in the industry for 15 years or more now. I used to have hair when I started. And I've worked in this industry for a long time. And the unfortunate truth is a lot of sales professionals don't work out in the profession because they don't get the support, they don't get the coaching, they don't get what they need to be successful. You know, if you want to be a plumber or an electrician or a doctor or a lawyer, whatever it is, you go through formal qualifications and you become that profession. There's nothing in sales. I hold my hands up. I fell into sales. And I was a classic person who left university and didn't know what I wanted to do and found my way into sales. And I was lucky that I managed to swim. I'd done all right. I got by. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't work out. So what Allego are doing is trying to help better enable sales professionals. And we're doing that by providing an all-in-one solution. So whether that be onboarding and training, you might have an LMS or a system that you use for onboarding and training, launches and rollouts, product updates, making sure the team can articulate the right message, content management, virtual selling, as I've touched on very briefly, which is becoming a massive part of what we do, which is communicating with buyers what they need in order to make informed buying decisions. And then coaching and collaboration, which is the conversation intelligence side of things. And conversation intelligence is the glue that holds this all together. Sales enablement is fantastic, but it's a waste of time if you can't get it to the fingertips of the reps when they need it. It's true, you know, you can create the best courses, the best training, the best onboarding, but if you don't get it to the reps when they need it, it's a waste of time. And conversation intelligence connects those dots. Because we're analyzing what happens, we can then connect the resources to the salesperson at the right time. And that's a big demand from sellers as well. The way we learn now has changed massively. You know, we're in a culture where everything is on demand. Our TV's on demand. Everything is there when you want it. You know, an example I give is a couple of weeks ago, we had a leaky kitchen tap. And my wife nagged me for about a fortnight to fix the tap. And I'm useless at DIY, that's why I work in sales. So I finally managed to have a go at fixing the kitchen tap. So what did I do? What was the first thing I did? I went online and Googled how to fix a kitchen tap. Found a YouTube video, 2 minutes long, showed me how to do it. Went to B&Q, bought what I needed and all the bits, come back, fixed the tap, didn't leak for a day, and then it started leaking again. But that was my problem, not the video. And that's what salespeople want. It's that moment of need. We want that content, that resource when we need it. We don't want all of the content when we start an organization or in a SharePoint or in a content management system that never gets used. We want it when we need it, and we need it when we engage with prospects. And that's what Allego does. It connects the dots with this. So we're providing training, learning, content, everything you can imagine to a salesperson when they need it. And that's how we connect the dots with the modern learning, the content management, and the conversation intelligence. So, as I mentioned to you, we've analysed over 110 million conversations. So we've got a bit of an insight into this. And what I'm going to discuss with you now is not my opinion, this is data-driven. This is the insights we've garnered from those conversations about why winnable deals are being lost by your reps. And I'm going to talk you through 10 of the top reasons why that is. The first one is pretty self-explanatory, is insufficient pain, value, and motivation. As salespeople, we aren't creating that desire to change the status quo. The biggest risk to any opportunity is doing nothing. If you look in your CRM at the lost deals, I would imagine most of those lost opportunities are because nothing happened. The customer went dark, you never heard back from them. It's not they went with a competitor or they didn't like your product, it's just they haven't got enough motivation to make that change. And that's because we aren't creating enough pain, value, or motivation. And that's a big problem for our salespeople. Lack of active listening. This is massive. Most salespeople listen in order to find their turn to speak. So we listen to what a prospect says, waiting to ask that killer question or give our product pitch or whatever it might be. We're not truly listening to what the salesperson said. And we've identified this in conversations, that there's a lack of active listening because salespeople are not picking up on what prospects are telling us. And then presenting the solution too early. I'm sure this is familiar with a lot of people. We call it premature capitulation at Allego, where we're giving the solution before we actually know the problems. And it's a massive problem. we've made a joke of it with that subject line, but it is true. Most salespeople are giving that solution before they really know what the problems are. We should only be prescribing solutions when we know what we solve, but salespeople don't. They rely on the product to do the selling. They do a harbour to a demo and hope something sticks, and often it doesn't, and that's why we get the status quo and people don't move forward. This is one that's close to my heart because I've struggled with this in my career, and it's the need to be liked. You might think differently with the last 15 minutes you spent with me, but I think I'm, quite a decent guy. I like to get on with most people. I'm pretty much a friendly guy who gets on with most people, and that's held me back in my career because I have that need to be liked as a person. I want to be friendly with people. I want to get on with people. I want to avoid confrontation. But the truth is, the best salespeople don't care about that. They care about doing the job, and I'll touch on this in a little bit more detail in a second. And then making it about us. So the big thing we do as salespeople is it's all about us. And a little challenge for you, we're in the ballroom there, in the top right-hand corner. Come and say hello, but just walk around the vendors and just say, what do you guys do? And I can almost guarantee you, unless some of them are in here listening, but over 50% of the people will say, oh, we're this solution, we do X, Y, and Z, we work with these clients, we've got these awards, blah, 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 blah. And if you're not asleep by the end of it, then you've done better than I could. But that's what we do. They make it all about us. And in sales, it's not about us. It's about that prospect and about their problems and their motivation. So a big challenge we have. Being a servant, not a doctor. So a sales relationship should be that doctor-patient relationship where we're prescribing solutions. We're that trusted advisor, and we're helping buyers through that decision-making process so they can make an informed decision. And often that is missed. Product, not problem. Again, I touched on this a little bit already, but people lead with the product. We all have fantastic products that we really believe in and think they can solve problems, but we often rely on that to do the selling, and that's not what selling is. Selling is about finding problems and solving those with your product. Missing the emotive nuggets. Again, I'll touch on this one in a little bit more detail. Happy ears. We've discussed this already. We're optimistic bunch of salespeople. We want to see the best in every prospect. We want to think every deal's going to close. We get what I call that commission breath, where we think we've got a deal here and we're going to win all this commission that we're going to spend on a new kitchen or whatever next. And we get happy ears as a result, which takes us away from actually listening to what a prospect is saying. And then weak next steps. And you might be thinking, well, obviously, yeah, but there's a difference between next steps and good, concrete next steps, which I'll touch on with you now. So I'm going to touch on 3 of those, because otherwise I'd bore you to tears going through all the 10. But 3 of the things I want to touch on is that need to be liked, missing the emotive nuggets, and weak next steps. So let's touch on the need to be liked. And I've already went into this in a little bit already, but as salespeople, we want to avoid confrontation. And it's just human nature. Not many people like confrontation. They don't want to have that. But we partner with a company called Objective Management Group. And some of you may be familiar with them. They basically assess salespeople. They've done 2 million assessments of salespeople. And they found that 86% of the weakest salespeople had a need to be liked. 86%. Yet only 11% of top performers have that same need to be liked. So it's a massive challenge in our organizations. Salespeople want to be liked, they want to be friends. And that's because we don't want to, rock the boat, we don't want to cause conflict. But those difficult questions that we avoid asking because we want to be liked are what really move that needle forward. And that's what changes the status quo and makes people actually buy. And then the last one there is people buy from people. Well, I think that's rubbish, if I'm honest. I think people buy from people they trust, not people they like, or they buy from people who can solve their challenges. But that's we've got a thing. I'm from the northeast of England, if anybody didn't notice already. We've got a thing up north saying salespeople have the gift of the gab. They can talk underwater, and it's rubbish. It is rubbish. It's not that. People buy from trusted advisors and people who can solve their challenges. And then missing the emotive nuggets, massive one. With emotive nuggets, often this emotional language that our prospects give us, which indicate pain, problems, are just totally missed by a salesperson. They fall on deaf ears. But this is the quickest way to finding problems, what our customers are facing or our prospects are facing. But salespeople miss it. Prospects will use language like it's really frustrating, it's really difficult, and then salespeople will just miss out on it. And it's natural, despite the best effort in the world, you miss things in a conversation live. But the beauty of technology like ours is it can actually replay those moments. So technology can say, hey, Stu, customer said X, Y, and Z. You might want to pick up on this in the next conversation. Or we can actually listen back to it ourselves. So it gives you a good insight into that as well. That's just a quick example of what it looks like in the transcript that we do. And then next steps, week next steps. So I hope all salespeople are setting next steps. I don't know if you would agree, but most people say, let's speak on Thursday at 10 o'clock. I'll send you the calendar invite and that'll be it. That'll be the end of next steps. And that's what average performers do. What top performers do is they set next steps, but they pan out what the decision-making process is going to look like. So they start to incorporate questions like, who else cares about this problem in your organization? What happens if you don't solve this? Who should we get involved? How have you bought technology like this in the past in your organization? So you're starting to get a window into what the buying process looks like and how as a salesperson we can become prescriptive and better control that buying process and again, be the doctor. So I've covered 3 there. This is a QR code. I hope it works. I've no idea. I've not tested it yet. This gives you a link to all 10 and a little bit more information, which you can work through on the 10 most common reasons why winnable deals are being lost, and a little bit of information that we share on how to solve those. So feel free to scan that. If it doesn't work, come and say hello and I can send it to you by your email or however, or we can share it over. And I guess that's why I think the secret to sales enablement is locked in sales conversations. I hope that resonate with a few of you. Hopefully it was helpful. If anybody does have any questions, like I say, we're in the ballroom at the top right-hand corner. Myself, my colleagues Lucy and Chris would love to have a quick conversation and share in a bit more detail. Hopefully that was helpful. Any questions, give me a shout. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, please.
I'm quite curious about millions of conversations that you've analyzed. From a practical point of view, does the rep go into the prospective client and get permission from the client to record the conversation? How do you go about doing getting the approval, especially if it's a prospect who you haven't really established a relationship with?
Great question. Yeah. And there's various different ways, and I won't get into the kind of laws of the land. It depends where you are in the world. Germany have quite strict call recording laws, where the UK is fine. It's what we call sole party consent. So if you and I have a conversation, if I phone you, as long as I know the call's recorded and it's used for legitimate purposes, then I'm fine to record it. So there's various different legalities around it. Companies that do exist in those dual party consent states or countries where both parties have to be aware. If I was cold calling you, I'd say something like, hey, it's Stu from a Lego on a recorded line. Have you got 35 seconds so I can tell you why I've chosen to call you this morning? And that would cover my basis that I've told you the call's recording. Zoom, technology systems like that now notify people, and we integrate with all those technologies and just pull them in. Most of our customers, in truth, already have call recordings in place, or they have some system, but what they don't have is insight into those conversations. They've got hours and hours of conversations, but who listens to them? We take those conversations and analyze them.
Face-to-face?
You can. In truth, face-to-face is rare. And we do have some organizations who, have an iPhone, or they'll set their laptop and record the conversation, but it's rare, in truth, that our organizations will do that. It's more demo Zoom recordings, but we do have a facility in the platform that can do kind of what we call exercises. So you can do kind of practice role play and digital role play, where you can get an insight into the message and how people articulate that message.
One more?
Yeah. How does you're talking about conversations? We've got a global sales force with all the different languages. How does your system cope with all those different languages?
Yeah. I am not a technical person, and I'm going to give you a salesperson's answer to this, but it's a piece of cake. We analyse all conversations in any language. If you don't speak a certain language, which I don't, I'm a typical Englishman, I speak poor English at best, I can get insight into conversations in multiple different languages, even if I don't speak that language. So I can start to get insight into what's happening in those conversations, despite me not speaking that language. So we have a lot of sales leaders who have geographically dispersed teams. They don't speak the language where their teams operate, but they can start to get visibility into their conversations without actually speaking that language.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thanks. If anybody has any questions, come and say hello. Thank you.